Today we continue with a classic zombies film from the United States, released in 2013, Open Grave. The story begins on a pitch-black, rainy night. A man wakes from unconsciousness, unsure of his location. Lightning flashes across the sky, and a foul stench fills the air. He pulls a lighter from his pocket, using its faint glow to see his surroundings. But what meets his eyes are several decaying bodies. He vomits on the spot, shocked to find himself in a deep pit filled with corpses. While still reeling, he suddenly sees a figure above ground. Jonah desperately shouts for help, but the figure vanishes instantly. Just when he thought help wouldn't come, a rope is thrown down the next moment. Jonah prepares to climb up, but glancing down, he spots a revolver amidst the pile of dead bodies. He decisively grabs it for protection. However, upon finally reaching the surface, he finds his rescuer gone. No matter how much Jonah calls out, there's no response. He walks aimlessly through the rain-soaked woods, soon spotting a lit-up house. He cautiously pushes the door open, hearing voices inside discussing whether or not to rescue him. Jonah steps in directly with his gun drawn, instantly creating a standoff. Neither side dares lower their weapon. With so many bodies outside, neither knows if the other is dangerous. However, Jonah spots the woman who threw him the rope among the group. As the standoff continues, a man lying on the floor suddenly wakes up. He screams in agony, his body contorting violently, clearly in distress. With the woman's help, the man gradually calms down. Strangely, everyone in the house has forgotten their names and all prior memories. There are no communication devices here, and no way to contact the outside world. It turns out they also woke up recently, so they know nothing about the situation. Fortunately, a man finds some ID cards in the house, revealing their names, but Jonah and a short-haired woman's identities remain unknown. Everyone discusses the situation, but the short-haired woman sits silently, writing something on paper in Chinese. It turns out the short-haired woman is mute and knows no English. The others also don't understand Chinese, so they have no idea what she's trying to convey. However, she seems to know something, as she was the first to wake up, earlier than anyone else here. When they found this house, the mute woman was already inside, and she seemed to recognize them. Lucas deeply distrusts Jonah because he's armed and the only one who woke up in the body pit. Similarly, Jonah trusts no one. Figuring out the situation is the top priority. Following Jonah's suggestion, they begin searching the house. The kitchen holds large supplies, far exceeding a normal family's daily needs. A calendar on the fridge catches Jonah's eye. Dates are crossed out with marker, except for the 18th, which is prominently circled. Jonah calls the mute woman over, asking about the calendar's meaning. She nods repeatedly, clearly knowing something. But after her frantic gesturing, Jonah can't grasp her message. One thing is certain, the 18th is absolutely a crucial date. Later, the group discovers a large stash of firearms and ammunition in the stairwell. Jonah questions, "What are all these weapons for?" Lucas seizes the moment to remark sarcastically to Jonah, "Killing this many people surely requires many weapons." Jonah ignores him completely. Michael then realizes he can handle firearms with expert precision, purely through muscle memory. This casts doubt on Michael's identity too. He's definitely not an ordinary person. Jonah wants to stop the pointless suspicion. Why not go outside immediately? They might find some clues, but Lucas opposes him again, saying it's fine to wait until dawn. As the two argue, they suddenly notice the mute woman has run alone into the woods. To figure out what she's doing, Jonah, Lucas, and Sharon grab weapons and chase after her immediately, leaving the others to wait in the house. Seeing the familiar path ahead, fragmented memories flood Jonah's mind. He dragged a body along this very route. This throws Jonah into self-doubt. Could he really be the killer? Meanwhile, Lucas catches a faint whiff of rotting flesh. They look closely, and the sight is horrifying. Several bodies are tied to trees. What kind of monster did this? They then continue exploring in the direction the mute woman went, soon spotting a small cabin. Carefully pulling open the wooden door, they find the mute woman inside. She is feeding a woman tied up with ropes. The tied woman's mental state is clearly unstable. Upon seeing Jonah, she becomes wildly frenzied, lunging as if to attack him. Jonah was utterly confused and had no choice but to try to calm the frantic woman down. Then they spot a camera mounted overhead. Someone is monitoring the woman in the cabin. Perhaps finding the surveillance room could reveal some truth. The only building nearby is the one they stayed in, so they immediately head back to the house. While Jonah searched the house with the key for the surveillance room, he accidentally discovered that both Nathan and himself knew Latin. Nathan also felt an unusual closeness to Jonah, something he didn't feel with the others, leading him to guess their relationship must have been very good before the amnesia. Jonah prepared to open the door before him to see if it was the surveillance room. But Nathan suggested he wait and not rush, saying that if there really was danger behind the door, opening it now would only alert the enemy, and since it was already late, they should rest and save their strength and wait until morning. Soon, it was the next day. The group prepared to head out for investigation as planned. Michael and the mute woman stayed behind to guard the house while the others entered the woods. They hadn't walked far when they noticed something strange. Someone had used barbed wire to completely fence off the area around the house. And just a few meters from the fence, they found a rotten corpse tied to a tree. This didn't look like the work of a deranged killer for amusement, but more like a deterrent, as if fearing something might break in. Carrying their questions, they continued toward the outer perimeter, unaware that something was happening back at the house. Michael and the mute woman suddenly heard movement in the woods. Michael instructed the mute woman not to run off and decided to investigate alone. He followed the sound with caution and arrived at a clearing, where in the distance, he saw a man trapped in the barbed wire, calling out for help. Seeing the man emaciated, covered in wounds, and in a pitiful state, Michael didn't hesitate to approach and try to save him. But as Michael helped free him, the man's expression turned vicious, and he strangled Michael with the barbed wire. Caught off guard, Michael was too late to resist. Meanwhile, Jonah's group unexpectedly discovered 2 cars hidden under branches by the roadside. Happily, both cars were functional, and the remaining fuel was enough for them to investigate further afield. However, Lucas found a photo in one car, a group photo of several of them, but Jonah was missing. This convinced Lucas even more that Jonah wasn't one of them.
I could be the one taking the photo.
That reasoning did seem to make sense. Just as they were about to continue driving to explore further, the mute woman came rushing over. She had discovered the madman on the fence and Michael lying on the ground, barely breathing. The group freed Michael, but he had already stopped breathing due to blood loss. Seeing Michael's body, the mute woman was devastated, clearly showing how important Michael had been to her. The madman on the fence suddenly started screaming wildly. Angered, Jonah shot him down. Images of moving bodies flashed through Jonah's mind again, filling him with a terrible sense of foreboding. Remembering tomorrow was the 18th with no idea what horror awaited, Jonah felt restless and dared not slack off. He quickly took Sharon in one car to continue searching for clues. They arrived at an abandoned building and saw unsettling numbers again. But after searching, they found nothing valuable. However, while Sharon looked in a mirror, she saw a figure flash by. They chased after it and, through a steel door secured by chains, discovered a young boy inside. Surprisingly, the boy recognized Jonah. Overjoyed, Jonah tried to engage him, hoping to get useful information, but was met only by the fierce barking of a guard dog. The boy kept repeating one phrase, telling Jonah to get away from here, and the boy was clearly afraid of Jonah. What was going on? Jonah was nearly driven mad, frantically trying to force the lock open to get answers, but failed after several attempts. Sharon urged him to stay calm and not frighten the child inside. Jonah gradually calmed down. Sharon couldn't help but gently touch Jonah's face. They gazed at each other deeply. Clearly, their past relationship was special. Back at the house, Lucas's memories began surfacing through splitting headaches. Vaguely, he saw the mute woman in his fragmented memory, clearly indicating they were also acquainted. Not only that, Nathan's memories also started slowly returning. He felt he knew the woman locked in the cabin. He asked the mute woman to take him there, hoping it would trigger more memories. But when they arrived, the cabin was empty. The frantic woman had escaped. Nathan, however, remembered another place nearby. He told the mute woman to return first. He would go alone. Following a familiar path through the woods, Nathan indeed found more small cabins, surrounded by corpses lying in disarray. Suddenly, glass crunched under his foot. He picked it up. It was a pair of glasses. Nathan instinctively put them on and found the prescription perfect. Clearly, these glasses were his. He then pushed open a cabin door. The interior resembled an isolation room, but the occupant had escaped. The madwoman was in the next cabin, holding the body of her deceased daughter in her arms. Nathan finally remembered her name. No sooner had he spoken than the woman shrieked and lunged at him. Nathan slammed the door shut in fright. Just as he caught his breath, more deranged people appeared outside, their horrifying appearance resembling the living dead. Meanwhile, back at the house, Lucas, guided by fragmented memories, began searching the vicinity for clues. He accidentally discovered a cellar that seemed like a laboratory, filled with experimental equipment and specimens of brain tissue. Lucas found a laptop. Turning it on revealed the surveillance feeds from the cabins. This was also the monitoring room. He then found a video recorder. Jonah appeared in the recording, seemingly conducting some kind of experiment. The experimental subjects were the mute woman and Lucas himself. Jonah stated on the recording that the side effects included a death-like coma and temporary amnesia. As for the purpose of his experiment and what happened afterward, the recorder held no complete record. But this convinced Lucas that Jonah was definitely not a good person. But during the journey, a large tree suddenly crashed down, blocking their path. They immediately got out to investigate, only to see several lumberjacks cutting trees not far away. Jonah prepared to greet them, but Sharon had a strong sense of foreboding. These people, like the frantic woman, all raised their axes and charged toward Jonah and Sharon. Seeing this, they quickly turned and fled. But as they jumped into the car and tried to start it, they noticed the group of madmen suddenly stop in their tracks. Jonah looked up and saw 2 more bodies hanging from a tree. It seemed their guess was correct. These corpses served as a deterrent, much like scarecrows in a rice field. Only they were meant to frighten these madmen. Jonah and Sharon didn't linger long, quickly driving back to their residence. The moment they stepped out of the car, they saw Lucas approaching angrily with a shotgun. He demanded to know what Jonah had done to them all, leaving Jonah utterly confused by the accusation. After seeing the content of the video, Sharon also began to suspect Jonah was the killer. Each of them had a scar on their arm, evidence left by the laboratory. With the facts laid bare, Jonah found it hard to defend himself. Lucas had no intention of giving him a chance to explain, immediately knocking him unconscious with the butt of his gun. Lucas dragged Jonah to the corpse pit, convinced that all the victims inside were test subjects, and said he would leave Jonah there to die. Facing the threat, Jonah had no choice but to comply, obediently jumping into the deep pit. Back in the foul-smelling corpse pit, Jonah was now on the verge of collapse. Staring at the countless bodies and the familiar tattoo on one corpse's back, fragmented memories flashed again. Who was he? What would happen tomorrow? Back at the house, Lucas's mental state also became unstable. His crazed demeanor resembled the madman. He even attempted to force himself on the mute woman, with terrifying veins bulging on his face. Fortunately, Sharon arrived in time and fired a shot to scare Lucas away. When Sharon walked to the window, she saw Lucas had already run toward the car. The rescued mute woman immediately went to the corpse pit and pulled Jonah up once more. From the mute woman's actions, it was clear Jonah was not a monster. Otherwise, she would not have chosen to save him. With time pressing, Jonah decided to return to that abandoned building. He had to get to the truth of the matter and clear his name for good. But when he reached his destination, he found the steel door already open. The boy was long gone. A family photo of the boy lay on the table, and a familiar yellow box on the floor triggered more flashes of memory in Jonah's mind. Jonah then discovered a map, which caused another wave of recollection. After roughly sketching the map route from memory, Jonah continued exploring the abandoned building. Unexpectedly, he encountered 2 madmen inside. Before Jonah could react, they lunged wildly at him. Jonah had no choice but to shoot them dead. Jonah then drove the car, planning to investigate along the mapped route. He drove until nightfall, only to encounter the boy's family again along the way. They were searching for supplies in a crashed car by the roadside. Jonah tried to approach, but the boy's grandmother stopped him with a shotgun. She furiously accused Jonah of kidnapping her daughter and injecting her with unknown chemicals. Jonah moved closer and realized the boy's mother had also gone mad. Without giving him a chance to speak, the family drove away. Shortly after they left, Jonah spotted the familiar yellow box by the roadside. Opening it, he found it contained many vials of chemicals. The box had fallen from the crashed car nearby, clearly the very vehicle from his memory, though the driver had died in the accident. Inside the car was a photo of Jonah and Sharon showing they were intimately close. Jonah regained even more memories. The truth was drawing near. But then he saw Lucas driving straight toward him. After narrowly dodging the car, Jonah quickly got up and told Lucas he was sick, that he only wanted to help him. Jonah was actually a doctor, and the contents of the box were clearly the vaccine he had developed. Not long ago, a terrifying rabies-like virus had broken out in this area, turning those infected into uncontrollable madmen. To develop a vaccine to cure the virus, Jonah and his team voluntarily stayed in the infected zone to conduct experiments. This included his brother Nathan and his wife Sharon. The 18th was the military's final deadline. Once that time arrived, they would completely purge the area. The madwoman and her daughter in the cabin, Lucas, and the boy's mother in the abandoned building were all test subjects in Jonah's experiment. The bodies in the corpse pit were deceased infected individuals. The vaccine had actually been developed, with side effects being a death-like coma and temporary amnesia. But before the vaccine could be delivered, the driver was attacked by an infected person, leading to the accident at the same time because Nathan had carelessly forgotten to lock the door. Infected individuals escaped. Jonah was the first attacked by an infected person, specifically the woman with the tattoo on her back. He was forced to kill her in self-defense, then dragged her body toward the deep pit. Unexpectedly, while en route, he received tragic news over the walkie-talkie from his brother Nathan. More infected people had escaped. The quarantine zone was completely out of control, and they were under attack. Jonah urged his brother to get back inside the house for safety and to inject everyone with the vaccine. No sooner had he spoken than an infected individual suddenly attacked, biting Jonah hard on the arm. In the chaos, Jonah fell into the deep pit alongside the female corpse. Luckily, he had the vaccine on him, so he quickly gave himself an injection, entering a false death state. Recalling everything, Jonah prepared to inject Lucas with the vaccine again. But Lucas suddenly went berserk, pinning Jonah firmly to the ground. Facing the threat of being strangled to death, Jonah had no choice but to grab a nearby rock and strike Lucas hard. The blow restored Lucas's consciousness, but also ended his life completely. With no time to grieve, Jonah now had to rush back to the cabin to tell everyone everything. As time passed, Sharon and Nathan in the cabin also recovered more memories. But simultaneously, a large group of infected individuals attacked, launching a frenzied assault on the cabin. For some unknown reason, the human scarecrows didn't work. They could only fight desperately against the infected, while the mute woman trembled in fear. It was only a matter of time before the place was overrun. Making matters worse, Jonah's car ran out of fuel on the way to the house, forcing him to continue on foot. The gradually brightening sky signaled the military's imminent indiscriminate purge. Soon, Sharon and Nathan hiding inside heard intense gunfire outside. The infected attacking them fell one by one. Clearly, the military had arrived as scheduled. Nathan, whose memory wasn't fully restored, naively believed the soldiers were there to rescue them, so he rushed out without hesitation. The result was predictable. He was instantly gunned down by the soldiers. Jonah, arriving just then, witnessed his brother being executed. Sharon, who had risked following him out, also saw it. They finally reunited but dared not approach the scene, only holding each other for comfort. This place was no longer safe. Jonah quickly led Sharon away. The mute woman, left alone, also narrowly escaped. Sharon was still worried about the mute woman's safety, but before they had run far, she was attacked by an infected individual. The attacker was the frantic woman who had lost her daughter. In desperation, Jonah shot the frantic woman dead, but the gunshots drew soldiers. They had to find a place to hide, and the corpse pit was obviously the perfect spot. So Jonah could only lead his wife back to the corpse pit. To be safe, he injected both Sharon and himself with the vaccine, entering the false death state to avoid detection. Just before losing consciousness, Sharon took out a piece of paper and told Jonah never to forget her. At this moment, Jonah had no idea these would be his wife's last words. Soon, they both slipped into the coma state. Not long after, several soldiers appeared at the edge of the pit. They found nothing unusual, merely threw down a few more bodies, and left. Hours later, Jonah awoke in the pit again. His mind was blank. Clearly, he had amnesia once more. He didn't know the woman beside him was his wife, nor did he notice the note Sharon had left. The stab wound from the frantic woman caused Sharon to bleed out. She would never wake again. Just like at the movie's beginning, it was the mute woman who threw down a rope to save Jonah. Seeing this, some might ask, what role did the mute woman really play? Surely not just to rescue the protagonist. This was actually what Sharon wanted to tell Jonah. Though Jonah pieced together the sequence of events from fragmented memories, he overlooked the crucial existence of the mute woman. Sharon happened to remember this point, so while fighting off infected, she took a moment to write the vital information on the note. It turned out the mute woman was the crucial key in the entire film because her body contained natural antibodies. Jonah had extracted the vaccine from her blood. She was the only one among them who didn't lose her memory, but due to the language barrier, she couldn't convey the information, leading to the series of tragedies. At the film's end, Jonah and the mute woman stood beside an even larger corpse pit where bodies were piled mountain high. Jonah was utterly confused once again, suggesting another cycle of slowly recovering memories and seeking the truth. That concludes this episode. Thank you, fans, for watching. We'll see you next time.